I'm delighted to be joined by Kieran Maguire from Price of Football podcast and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire, as Kevin says, twice a week.
Well, I think that covers me for insurance purposes if I say something naughty about a club owner, but we've never quite put it to the test.
Really? Probably not going to do it on this podcast either.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, you've been busy with putting out the finances of different clubs, and ours are in there as well. So as soon as ours came out, somebody mentioned it, and I thought, yeah, let's see if we can get Kieran on, and here you are. So really appreciate your time. First thing I wanted to ask really is quite a generic question. Is there anything for county fans to be worried about with these financial statements? Because there's eye-watering numbers as far as we're concerned, especially where we've come from, National League, semi-professional, regional football, not so in the too distant past. Should we be worried?
I always say to people, you don't need to be worried. You don't need to be worried until you are worried. It seems a strange thing to say. And the reason why I'm saying that is that most clubs are being subsidised by owners. The door.
It's okay.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
So if we take a look at 95% of clubs, they're losing money. So in any other business, you would have a cause for concern because the investors in the business say, if we've got a loss-making business in a long-term basis, what's the point of continuing? But football is different. Football is an emotional investment. Football is part of your history and heritage and identity of being part of Stockport, and it's the same in the case of the club at present with the owner. So therefore the numbers are scary. To lose £7 million in a year at the level where county are at present, that's 140 grand a week. Somebody's effectively having to find that, and we know who's finding it. That makes no sense in a normal business environment, but you have to suspend reality when you go into the world of football. You even if you go further up the league, when Abramovich owned Chelsea, it cost him 900 grand a week for 19 years. But provided the owner can afford it, then you've not got a problem. Where you have got a problem is what we've seen, not too far away. You pop down to Macclesfield Town. Well, the owners started messing around. You saw what happened at Bury. I know these clubs. You don't love these clubs as county fans, but I always say to people, you can't have a rivalry without rivals. And I don't think there was any joy in what happened there. We've got Sheffield Wednesday, who are they're a massive club. They've not paid their wages this month. You've got Reading with a winding up order. So it's nothing to worry about, provided the owner continues that level of funding and the owner's circumstances don't change. So in the case of Abramovich, the UK government said we don't want you anymore. In the case of Bury, whilst Steve Dale is an absolute scumbag, it was actually the previous owner whose business ran out of money. And if you as soon as you go into any depths as to what his business was, you realised it was a disaster waiting to happen. So you need to make sure that your owner is not, for want of a better phrase, a wrong one. And county don't have that as an issue at present.
Yeah, I could totally agree with that. A lot's been made amongst county fans and seeing what he's done and the plans that he's got, and also the writing off of debts. I get confused by this myself because I'm a layman in finance terms. I totally admit that. He writes off a debt every year. That just doesn't vanish into thin air, does it? Does that just become null and void, and the club doesn't owe that, or could that be brought back at a later date to say, well, hang on a minute, you've got all of this to one side in a pot?
There's two types of funding when it comes to a football club. There's loans where the owner says, I'll give you some money. I will put money into Stockport County's bank account. And that happens from some owners. Now, I'll be honest, the vast majority of owners under those circumstances, it's a bit like the bank of mum and dad. So our kid passes his driving test, comes to me and says, Dad, pass my driving test. I said, well done, lad. He says, yeah, any chance of 15 grand? I want to buy a car. Will you lend it to me? Now, I know that he's never going to offer to repay it. And he knows that as his old man, I'm never going to ask for it back because, it's tough being part of the young generation these days. But in theory, it's a loan. Most football clubs who have borrowed money from owners are not in a position to ever repay them. So it's a loan, but it's not a loan. But sometimes that can cause problems because if the owner sees their arse, then you've got a problem. The other way of putting money into a football club is in the form of shares. So if we take a look at County and Mark Stott, what Mark has done, and this is why he is very much not on my naughty step, is that last year he put £11 million of cash into the Stockport County bank account in the form of shares, and you can't ever get the money back from your shares. You can sell the shares to somebody else, but that money's never coming out of the Stockport County bank account. So it's a glorified donation, and therefore it's not something to worry about. What you have to be slightly more concerned about is that Stockport County last year lost £7 million. And to put that in layman's terms, the money they got from ticket sales, from the TV deal, from sponsorship, merchandise was so much. The wages and the maintenance and the transport costs and the insurance costs and all of the general overheads were £7 million more than that. And Mark Stott putting that £11 million in meant that County didn't have a problem. What happens if he does walk away? But then, what happens if my wife walks away from me? What happens if I lose my? If you go around with that mentality, you would never do anything. So look, he is a County fan. He is a local lad. I'm a Brighton fan. We've got an owner who's put 400 million into the club. If he says he wants his money back, the club doesn't exist, and it's the same up and down the country. So under normal business circumstances, you would say this is really scary, but football is an industry where we sometimes refer to it as it's a trophy asset industry, in the sense that the owner wants to be able to say, I'm the owner of Stockport County, I'm the owner of Wigan, I'm the owner of Rotherham United, doesn't matter Accrington, it doesn't matter what the club is, and I'm prepared to subsidise the day-to-day losses that the club's running up.
Yeah, okay. Something that you may or may not be aware of, since Mark Stott came in 2020, he's had a plan to get to the Championship in 7 years, and we're by rights this season we're ahead of that plan, and that's, I think, all of those investments that he's made, or investments, I mean, there are investments in there as well as sort of operational costs, all gears up to this getting to the Championship with it by 2027. If we do get to the Championship, some of the numbers that I've heard, certainly on your podcast, are scary. £400,000 lost per week on average, I think, is this the club sort of numbers. Where would that leave sort of us in terms of affordability in that division? Because we're based on the numbers that we've got currently, especially with the ground as it is, 10,500, and the sort of the turnover that we're getting. Where do you see that leaving us?
Well, if you get into the Championship next season, there'll be a few things. The value of the TV deal, which currently is worth probably about 1.8 million, that'll go up to 9 million. So you've got more money coming in, but everybody in the Championship's going to be getting that, and you're going to have probably 6 or 7 clubs in receipt of parachute payments, which are worth between 35 and 45 mil. So You are swimming and you are fishing in a different pond. Every match at Edgeley Park, I think, could be sold out. You will have away fans, and I don't, I don't know what it's like in League One this season. I think, my outside observation is that League One's a damn good league, and you get decent away followings. You're pretty much guaranteed every away following is going to sell out. You look at Leeds United, Sunderland, Derby, all massive clubs in their own right. You've got the 2 Sheffield clubs. Yes, some of those clubs will be going up. Birmingham are up, and then there's I think there's a team in North Wales which is doing quite well.
Possibly.
Couldn't
possibly.
Absolutely. So the away allocation. So I think you can reasonably expect that the Edgeley will be full. Ticket prices might go up a wee bit, and you'll get some more sponsorship and commercial income. But you're absolutely right. Average losses last season, 376 grand a week. I've just been looking at Leeds accounts. They got relegated down in the Championship in 2023-24. Leeds are huge. You look, Ellen Road sold out every week. They've got parachute payments. They're being sponsored by big sponsorship deals. They lost £1 million a week in the Championship. So how do you compete? The Leeds wage bill was £88 million. Counties, you could knock off a zero from that easily. They're probably in the region of perhaps 6 or 7. So how do you therefore survive? I think the choices are you could do a Rotherham, and what Rotherham have tended, and Rotherham wouldn't say they're a yo-yo club, but Rotherham have been promoted from the Championship to League, from League One to the Championship on a few occasions in recent years. And what they do, they say, our ambition is to finish 19th or 20th, sorry, to avoid the relegation. And that's it. And their owner says, I'm willing to lose a little bit each year. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. The alternative to that, Bournemouth have got a capacity of 11,000. They're in the Premier League. They're brilliant. They play absolutely cracking football. Luton Town, they were in the Premier League last season. They've got a ground with a capacity of 11,000. So Edgeley Park being restricted in terms of size, it certainly doesn't help, but it doesn't make progress an impossibility. I think realistically, and I've been talking to quite a few clubs in recent weeks, they're all saying the same thing. If we do get promoted to X or to Y, yes, the owner's willing to put some money in, but if we're honest, we need to find some more investment. We need to start looking for third parties. And what we're seeing at present is American investors. The American economy has been doing spectacularly well over the last 10 to 12 years. And there's an awful lot of rich people there. And there's an awful lot of people who have fallen in love with soccer because they've watched Ted Lasso and they've watched Welcome to Wrexham. And you might be thinking, Kieran, they're a bit naff. But they love the whimsy. If you've watched Welcome to Wrexham as a TV program, it is superbly produced. It has got genuine tension, uncertainty, even though you know what the results are going to be. And it's a fantastic product. And that has accelerated interest. Now, I'm a little bit cynical about this because my view is that it's one of those shows which the first version of it's a bit like, you remember when Big Brother used to be on? Remember the first when we first thought, Big Brother, it's absolutely brilliant. And when you got to Big Brother 4 or 5, it just became really formulaic, and the viewing figures started to drop. So I don't think there's much opportunity to repeat that. But certainly, when I talk to American investors, they love the old country, for want of a better phrase. That's how they see. And I'm old enough to remember when the United States used to be an ally. of the UK. So they still, some of them still like us. So there's that. There's the cost of the alternatives. If you're an American billionaire and you want to buy a sports franchise, you can't afford to buy into the NFL or the NBA because it's going to cost you billions of dollars. Presently, we've got somebody who's about to take over Leyton Orient. That's going to cost 18 million quid. So it's terrible things because it's a ridiculous amount of money. It's fun money for billionaires. So buying a stake in Stockport, and let's assume that County get promoted, and which would be absolutely fantastic. I used to live in Bramwell, so I'll be absolutely made up if it happens. If County go up, then you are 46 games away, or if we take the playoffs into account, you're 49 games away from the Premier League, and you're pitching that to investors. So therefore, you are 49 games away over the course of this summer from hosting Liverpool and Manchester United and Manchester City and Chelsea and Arsenal and all of these amazing football clubs. And that's actually quite seductive and that's quite appealing. So I think that would be one consideration that County might want to go down if Mr. Stott says, I can't afford to fund this all myself, but there's somebody who's willing to come in and buy 15 or 20% of the club, or even more.
Yeah. Yeah, exciting and scary in equal measure. Having again going back to it, having been where we've been close to the wall a few times, and I think sort of fans have this glib attitude, I think, towards debt and administration, possibly due to like memories of clubs surviving past crises, notwithstanding sort of Bury and Mac. If it did come to it, and Mark Stott walks away, not that I think he's going to, by the way, I know him. I think he's committed. Do you think that's just final? Then it's fatal, given where the investment that we've already had, or is there a way that it could survive?
No. What we do see in the football industry more than any other that I know, and I used to work in the insolvency industry before I became a teacher, is that it is incredibly resilient. And when the worst comes, or when you think the worst comes, what tends to be the case is the fans rally round. You look at clubs like Exeter and Wrexham and Portsmouth, they who have had rogue owners. They will say, we can't let this die because this is so important to us. When I talk to Bury fans, when the club was destroyed, and it was destroyed partly by the EFL. I don't think the EFL ever got the amount of criticism that they probably deserved. And the same for Macclesfield Town. But certainly when I spoke to people at Bury, because I got to know people around town relating to that, what they said to me was that the worst thing was that we became like zombies. If it doesn't impact you necessarily in League One and League Two, but international weekends when there's no, I support Brighton. I've been in League Two, I've been in League One, now in the Premier League. But international weekends are dreadful. You just, what to do? You wake up on a Saturday, and even if the match has been transferred to the Sunday, you're still thinking about it, and you go, what am I going to do with myself? I have to go to the garden. I have to go to the garden centre. I'll be dragged around IKEA by the wife. And I know this Bury fan said to me, imagine doing that 52 weeks of the year as a football fan. It doesn't bear countenance. So that's why we tend to see the fans putting up some form consortium, and you've seen what's happened. We've now got Macclesfield FC instead of Macclesfield Town, and they've just been promoted. I'm not name dropping here because it's not the type of thing you would know. I regularly get calls from Robbie Savage about various, and Robbie. It's not an act with Robbie. Robbie is a full Robbie Savage impersonator, 24 hours of the day. The excitement that he's having running that football club is amazing. And you look at them when they got promoted the other week. Yes, they've had to go down a few tiers. So worst case scenario, and this ain't going to happen at County, by the way, because Mr. Stott isn't that type of guy. I think he is. There's no point bringing the club this far and then walking away. There's no rationale in that whatsoever. But I don't think that there's anything to worry about in that score. It's scary to see, but Bolton, they've lost 11 million, and they've been through a few owners recently. Every club that I'm reporting on, and I've reported on about 30 in the last 2 days. My wife's left me. My wife is. My wife is. I said it's 31st of March coming up. That's club reporting day. So we live down in Brighton. She's gone away to Liverpool for 3 days with one of her mates. So you'll just spend all your time doing spreadsheets and podcasts. Which to be fair, she was right.
I do apologise. I'll apologise to your wife on Twitter at some point. I guess finally then, because I know time is of the essence. Just if you could just wrap it up for us in terms of what your outside view looking in terms of our ownership model and Mark Stott is. I know you've touched on it briefly, but it'd be good to just to sort of recap it and maybe put at ease some of the county fans that we've got that are saying, bloody hell, 21 million's eye water in, and if we're in trouble and all that kind of stuff.
I think I would put Mark Stott into the good club owner category myself, and therefore it's a bit like the relationship between parent and child. And I go back to that analogy. If you were to look at having children from a sustainable point of view, you wouldn't invest in them, because you got 16, 18, 21 years of shelling out on something and you don't get a financial return. Well, your football club's like that. If you're an owner who supports the club, you're willing to simply accept that level of losses. So for me, Mark Stott is the fourth emergency service at County. In the sense that you've got your ticket money, you've got your TV money, you've got your commercial money. That's not enough to run the club. Mark Stott's item number 4. And whilst he continues to do that, County don't have an issue.
Good to hear. Brilliant. I'm sure everybody will be delighted to hear that. And just finally, before we do wrap up, a bit about yourself. You alluded to living in Bramwell. I think you said on your podcast, Cheadle Hume as well, and you used to go to City, County. I think you've been to all of them. What's your sort of overriding memory and thoughts of County? Standing your dog.
Postman's just arrived. My kids were born in Stockport, so Stockport General. So I've got a lot of affection for the place. I think it's a club which can establish itself. There's no reason why County can't A, get to, and B, thrive in the Championship. There's plenty of disaffected fans from other clubs in the city in the city of Manchester who would be more than willing to come and watch. You've got a good fan base as it is. You've got the Hat Museum. What more could go possibly wrong? So I've got a lot of time for. I used to play cricket for Bowden. Well, that's more Altrincham, isn't it? But I played cricket for Cheadle Hume. I've got a lot of time for the place. So my kids were born there.
Brilliant. Good stuff. Kieran, I'll let you get on with whatever it is you're doing next in your busy schedule. Thank you so much for joining me on the Scarf Bagara War. Hope you've enjoyed it, and cheers. Thank you.
All the best, Russ. And
cheers.
Up the counter this season.